Welcome back to another sci-fi episode where psychology and finances collide. So welcome back to the Financial Pain Management Clinic, where we will examine today how we think, feel, and behave with money as it relates to gratitude. And this is another brain changer, or should I say pain changer. Last episode, we discussed the neurostructural phenomenon of neuroplasticity and how doing something different, repeated over and over, pulls us out of a rut, creating brain changes in the form of new neural pathways, or that essentially build new roadways to finally reach our financial destination. We discussed the importance of having a basic level of neuropsychology. It helps us feel encouraged and empowered, and even logically resulting in more buy-in, that what I actually want to do with my finances can one day become a reality by making small, incremental, repeated behavior part of your daily financial practice. Today, we go beyond the structural changes in your brain and move towards the topography or landscape of your brain. Then, how it's watered with all the glorious neurochemicals that also have a bidirectional effect in motivating us to repeat positive financial behaviors. One day, becoming that person who says, "This is easy." And let me give credit again to Dr. Baggett, because he provided a lecture on all the updates in positive psychology and all those nuggets that lead to a meaningful life. Now, it's my job to bring you how that is incorporated into the financial world, and I can't help but put my spin on it. So, some of these quotes that I heard Dr. Baggett use, and I incorporate some of my own as well, really forced my pen to paper, inserting financial terms to drive the points home even further. And we're going to start with gratitude and its impact on the brain. And as I stated in the last session, what's good for the brain is also good for the heart, and vice versa. So here's what the famous Greek philosopher Epictetus wrote. "He is a wise man who does not long for or grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for that which he has." Let me read that again. Epictetus wrote, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for that which he has." As I tell you repeatedly, get your steel-toed boots on, because there's going to be some toe stepping, and that includes myself. All 10 fingers pointing back to me. So I do want to preface this, that clearly what I'm about to change up in this quote doesn't apply to those whose basic needs really aren't met. But a lot of folks who have the ability to listen to a podcast, usually, especially this audience that are primarily made up of federal employees, you have an income that is sufficient. But I do understand there might be some listeners where truly they are struggling to even meet basic needs. So I never want you to feel less than or judged for what we're about to say in this class. This quote from the Greek philosopher, I'm going to change up a little bit. "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the income, house, or car which he has not, but rejoices for that income, house, and car which he has." Or go back and insert the things you've been groaning about, because after all, the antithesis of gratitude is complaint. If we're not grateful, then usually we're in a state of neutrality or complaint. As asked in the last episode on neuroplasticity, and what experiences or data do we want to keep feeding our brain in regards to our finances, perhaps we can look at it from this angle. Is it scarcity or abundance focused? Is it complaint or gratitude focused? Is it resentment or gratitude focused? Is it trauma or growth focused? Is it denial or reality focused? You have the freedom to choose. And you've heard gratitude is an attitude, but psychologist Robert Emmons, who's devoted his research to the topic of gratitude, states, and I quote, "It is much more than that. Gratitude has also been depicted as an emotion, a mood, a moral virtue, a habit, a motive, a personality trait, a coping response, and even a way of life." End quote. What I love about this quote is gratitude is not just an emotion. It's not just a feeling. It is a lot more than that. So I'm going to pick apart this quote. He goes on to say that gratitude provides a sense of wonder, thankfulness, and appreciation for life. And when we talk about emotion and mood in his previous quote, what would be replaced in our brains when we think of it from that realm? So when you temper complaints and voice thanks, it shifts you from a scarcity focus to one of abundance. To me, that sounds very much like a spiritual and transcendent experience. We go from telling people what we don't have to look at what I do have and celebrating and rejoicing in it. It's a whole other feeling. The brain agrees. As neuropsychologists have found that the grateful brain activates the anterior cingulate cortex, which is known for interpersonal bonding, which increases our tendency to ask for and give forgiveness, and even receive forgiveness. We also notice our social supports more when we are in a grateful posture. Even more striking is a huge benefit of gratitude that includes a release from post-traumatic stress disorder. And this isn't just Olivia reading opinions. This is Olivia who has attended highly intellectual lectures from neuropsychologists, positive psychologists, or positive psychology practitioners. And here's another psychologist who dedicates her efforts towards the study of happiness, who states that gratitude is an antidote to negative emotions, a neutralizer of envy, avarice, hostility, worry, and irritation. So let's pick apart that quote again and add some financial things. Gratitude is an antidote to negative emotions about money, a neutralizer of envy of your neighbors, the Joneses, a neutralizer of avarice, and avarice is defined as an excessive or insatiable desire to hoard or build wealth from a place of fear or greed, so it even is an antidote for that. So it also is a neutralizer of hostility towards those that have what you want, because you likely have something they need. A neutralizer of worry about money, and a neutralizer of irritation with yourself. But don't take the good psychologist's words for it and my additions to the quote for it. Let's allow the brain to speak for itself. So remember the old powerful anti-drug campaign commercial with the speaker saying, this is your brain, showing an egg, and this is your brain on drugs, and then places the egg or cracks the egg into the skillet. The egg is sizzling, getting cooked in that frying pan. Well, the visual I'm about to give you is nicer. Your brain on gratefulness is a more beautiful demonstration of how your brain gets a nice scratch behind the ears, or another word for saying reward for being grateful. Here's what it looks like. The left region of the prefrontal cortex is activated. The area of the prefrontal cortex known for positive emotion, approach behaviors, identifying and labeling thoughts and feeling, and the development of new narratives. Listen, I could not have asked for a greater region of the brain to be tapped with gratefulness in this financial talk, because if you go back and listen to all the chronic financial pain episodes, you hear me talk often about the pain and avoidance cycle. And one of the things that I see most often in session is people avoiding money talks, avoiding engaging in new money practices or experiments. They avoid it altogether. But this is the area of the brain where you engage approach behavior. So if you've been avoiding filing your taxes, avoiding paying down your debt, avoiding your spouse with financial discussions, if you practiced a little bit of gratefulness for what you do have, it postures you to receive new information and tap that side of your brain that is ready for new information. It's also the region of your brain for identifying and labeling thoughts or feelings. And we talk about that in several episodes of how your money mindset can hold you back from reaching your financial goals. And also the development of new narratives. So isn't that what we're wanting to do with our financial narratives? Shape them into positive and motivating narratives that cause us to approach our money differently? Well, here's some examples, some new narrative examples that come with gratitude. Because again, if gratitude or the antithesis of gratitude is complaint, the synonymous term for gratitude would be a place of abundance, which leads us to that whole concept of scarcity versus abundance when it comes to what's in the current financial practice literature. So we can move from scarcity to abundance when we adopt a gratefulness practice. We can move from complaint to grateful. We can move from scraps to bounty. We can move from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. We can move from survival to readiness. And this is all neuroplastic. And so that's such a great thing for us. And just to break it down even further, a scarcity mindset in personal finance is something that's driven by fear. That money has an end, that it will disappear, and it's not lasting. So this leads to some anxiety where we get this short-term thinking that regardless of what we do and regardless of how we want to practice, our income will never be sufficient. I hate that. And I hear that often in session. And I wish it were just as easy as, hey, stop that. That's not good thinking. That's stinking thinking. But first of all, that's going to put somebody on the defense and they'll never come back for another session. But here's what we can look at differently. So a form of scarcity or complaint narrative, the antithesis of gratitude, would be the narrative of the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle, or the belief that mid and end of month LES is my only reality, that there's nothing else that I can incorporate into this, that this is the only thing that I have. which leads to a reliance on high interest, unsecured debt, and maybe even predatory lending. So having a scarcity mindset, having that complainant type of narrative without that gratefulness postures you for financial harm and further financial pain and therefore further financial suffering. There's also another narrative, the fixed pie fallacy, where the belief that wealth is limited. And if someone else is getting rich, then they're taking it from me. That's dangerous. And then you start focusing on envy and resentment of others' success instead of focusing on what you can bring to the table, your own personal worth and your value and what you're able to do differently. And there's also the narrative that goes with that, being in survival mode, that feeling that you're always one emergency away from total ruin, which could lead to hoarding cash and low interest accounts, avoiding market risk, and never getting to a place of long-term growth. And listen, within that scarcity narrative, there's also scarcity of time. Olivia, I just don't have the time to do this. That's why I hired the debt settlement company to do this for me. Yet they don't realize that that's going to cause further harm, especially if they hold a security clearance. Or the scarcity of knowledge. Olivia, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to reach out to someone for that. I don't have the resources for that. So how could I follow up with these resources or even learn what I need to know to do something different? It just, again, breaks my heart to see that this is how the scarcity mindset works. And you can tell a shift in our conversation, right? And even our brains are different, because when you are accessing in a grateful brain, that left region of the prefrontal cortex, that is the area of positive emotion and approach behavior. But then you have the right side of the prefrontal cortex, which we'll get into in a moment, which is survival mode. And it's necessary, but it's a little more negative. So it appears research is showing that a posture of thanksgiving or gratefulness is a major ingredient in preparing our prefrontal cortex for identifying and labeling these thoughts that we just talked about. And that activation of the left region of the prefrontal cortex is also associated with happiness. Gratitude specifically benefits us psychologically with a sense of increased well-being and life satisfaction. And I've told everyone in these episodes over and over again that the psychologist's definition of happiness is simply your subjective sense of well-being. So if gratitude is giving us an increased sense of well-being, well, we might as well put two and two together and say we're happier as a result. And I can see how life satisfaction would be tied to gratefulness. It's the gateway to even noticing what is good and lovely in your life. I have an income, which leads to labeling that something that we have as good and lovely. This is a good income, leading to a positive attachment and perception. I am blessed. Leading to satisfaction and contentment. So when we complain or are dissatisfied or not content, we activate the right prefrontal cortex associated with negative emotional states, withdrawal, behavioral inhibition, and feeling overwhelmed emotionally. And boy, if we just connect those dots, this is where people get stuck in the financial session and outside of the financial session. Negative emotional states, withdrawal, behavioral inhibition, which is this fancy way of saying, I feel paralyzed, I feel stuck, and then feeling overwhelmed emotionally. And again, that area of the brain, which is the decision-making portion of our brain, it has its place. We have to be able to make quick decisions for survival, but that's if we truly don't have an adequate income. But many of us are tricking our brains into thinking that we don't. And remember, pain is referenced in the brain. So when we continue to tap that region of our brain, negative emotional state, withdrawal, behavioral inhibition, and feeling overwhelmed emotionally, our pain intensifies and therefore our suffering increases. So here's the good news. The grateful brain also activates the anterior cingulate cortex, where we can activate both emotion regulation and interpersonal effectiveness. We've talked about this a little bit already, but the anterior cingulate cortex has assisted the field of psychology and psychiatry in understanding psychopathology, most notably educating patients on managing uncomfortable feelings and tolerating distress. Does that sound familiar or what? When it comes to chronic financial pain, so many uncomfortable feelings and distress that we're trying or attempting to tolerate. And avoiding only increases that pain. So gratitude also prepares this region of our brain for the work that lies ahead: emotion regulation, distress tolerance, interpersonal effectiveness. Gratefulness particularly lays the groundwork in the anterior cingulate cortex for interpersonal bonding, increasing social bonds. Think about it. People want to stick around the grateful, not the resentful. Do you want to be the type of person where people are happy to see you arrive or happy to see you leave? And here's a quote that I like from Albert Einstein, and this kind of shows his level of gratitude. 100 times every day, I remind myself that my inner and outer life depend on the labors of other people, and that I must exert myself in order to give in the same measure as I have received and am still receiving. It's obvious that his anterior cingulate cortex was tapped in that moment because he's feeling interpersonally bonded with everyone else. Hey, my success is related to you and what you've also done for me and how you've shaped me. And it just blows my mind away that here's a genius with social skills. It is doable. It is achievable. So what's great about this research is that as you're tapping this area of your brain, it shows later that there's been lasting change months later. And this anterior cingulate cortex activation, made possible by gratefulness, can also heal interpersonal pain, as gratefulness has shown that grateful people, as we discussed before, are more forgiving and even enjoy a satisfying romantic relationship. So if effective communication is one of your key financial goals, just practicing gratefulness before you go into that conversation, again, can prepare you for the work that lies ahead. Another thing that the grateful brain reaches is that pea-sized area of your brain that controls sleep and regulates metabolism, your hypothalamus. It packs a powerful punch regardless of its size. Gratefulness does. It also packs a powerful punch with its size or regardless of its size. Just one small thing that you can find grateful can offer that power punch. But gratefulness research consistently shows a positive impact overall, with the grateful brain receiving better and quality sleep and increased immune system functioning, and my personal favorite, decreased physical pain. Doesn't this make you want to try on the tiniest bit of gratefulness? I know I'm going to try one of my own recommendations at the end of this episode. I actually plan on doing this with my family at the dinner table tonight, and we'll get there in a moment. The grateful brain taps the ventromedial prefrontal cortex as well, most noted for integrating values into decision making. And what am I always telling you about financial goals and values? Incorporate the both of them. But wait, there's more. The ventromedial PFC, or prefrontal cortex, is also known for evaluating risk and financial decisions. It's so amazing when all this comes back full circle. And another area of the brain is reward circuitry. So it enhances reward circuitry. So you can naturally boost your serotonin and awaken the brainstem to produce dopamine. And you guessed it, gratitude research reveals the psychological benefits of decreased symptoms of stress, anxiety, and depression, with increased side effects of joy, enthusiasm, happiness, love, and optimism. Now, those are side effects I can live with. So how do I increase gratefulness, Olivia, to derive the psychological benefits of gratitude? Well, I have a friend that has been on the episode prior to. She has since left the federal government, but Carolyn White, who was one of our EAP coordinators, she brought this back to top of mind not too long ago. We were just going on a walk talking about our kids. And it's the 3 good things. 3 things that went well today. So that's all you do. You write it down. 3 things that went well today. Here's the stickler. You have to write down why they happened and how you contributed to that happening and how others contributed. That'd also be part of the why. But it also must be 3 different things every day. And you cannot repeat an item. So it forces you to go back and look through your journal and make sure that you didn't bring up that thing that you've already mentioned, while simultaneously forcing you to take notice of all the things that you were grateful for previously. And do this every day for at least 2 weeks. That is the greatest prescription for gratefulness. I'm excited to try this on myself. I know that it has lasting implications. You can also try one that I've used with clients over the years. It's called Grateful Reminiscence. That's how Dr. Baggett describes it, but from a solution-focused perspective, we call it something else. But it's the same idea. You either conjure up a mental image or pull out the physical or digital photo album that dredge up feelings of gratitude. And you just journal 1 time per week, reminiscing on the past experience of gratitude. And that is where a picture is worth 1,000 words. And listen, you're only pulling those pictures that are conjuring up mental images or conjuring up associations with those feelings of gratitude or dredge up those feelings of gratitude. And you just write about it 1 time per week, reminiscing on all those past experiences of gratitude. I hope this has been helpful for you. I will give you a reprieve from the Financial Pain Management Clinic in the next 2 episodes because I'll have a special guest, estate planning attorney Emily Baggett. You've heard her before. She's going to be following up from our financial symposium and getting into the weeds and the minutia about a couple of the classes that she provided on Till Debt Do Us Part and Grave Consequences. But then we'll circle back for our next checkup and discuss gratitude's long-lost cousin, savoring. Until then, remember to rate and review the pod wherever you listen.